I'm Christy.
And I'm Kathy.
And this is The Psychic
And the Skeptic. Welcome back to The Psychic and the Skeptic. And on this episode, we are opening our case files and presenting to you the McInteer Villa Mansion in Atchison, Kansas.
This was a very cool investigation, and I probably will go back at some point with our group, I would imagine. Let's go check it out again.
Definitely need to. This is one of my favorite cases because of the experience I had there that I'm still to this day struggling with as a skeptic, which I cannot wait to get to and talk about with you.
And that seems to happen a lot to you.
We're featuring our favorite cases early on in this podcast. But Atchison, Kansas is a town just over an hour northwest of Kansas City, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri, if you're fancy like that.
Right.
So this is a historic mansion, and I'll go into the history on this gorgeous house with you in just a moment here. But Christy, talk to us about how we got to this particular case.
Okay. So, of course, we are friends with API, Afterlife Paranormal Investigations.
Hi, Jill.
And Brooke and Tammy, if you're listening.
Yes.
Hi, Jill. They highly recommended that our group go check this place out. They had already been there several times. And so my team looked into it and we set a date and got to spend 2 wonderful days here. It was so much fun. But what was intriguing about this is there were a lot of claims. And this mansion, of course, is huge. And Kathy can explain all that in a minute. But some of these claims were that the lights would go off and on in the home, and especially in the tower part. So on the very top floor, there's this rotunda-looking area. And
it almost looks like the tower of a castle where Rapunzel would let down her hair.
Right? In fact, that's what they name it, is the tower. So lights would be seen in there, and there's absolutely no electricity. Figures are also seen in the windows when no one is at home or in the house. The rocking chair that's in one of the living areas, it rocks on its own. There's doors that slam all throughout the night. Footsteps are heard on the second floor all the time, including very actively at night. There's also people who report feeling very uneasy. They feel like they're being watched. Items have been known to move from one location to another. Doorknobs turn and creak.
When we are researching the claims, we look for what the homeowners say, or even if a place like this that occasionally paranormal teams will go in and investigate, they'll also list some claims that they experienced while investigating. And a lot of this we take note of because it helps us to determine the areas where we're going to concentrate our investigation on to see if we can see the same activity and we can corroborate these claims, and first trying to debunk to see if we can find a logical explanation, or if we struggle with finding the logical explanation and all we're left with is the paranormal.
Right.
So that feeling of uneasiness on the second floor.
Like they're being watched.
Right. That is what, as an investigator, I'm thinking I want to get electromagnetic field readings. I want to look to see if there's some wiring that's not grounded very well that gives off that EMF, because it's known scientifically that high EMF levels can cause people to feel like somebody's watching them. So anytime we hear that claim, we're like, ooh, we need to check EMF, make sure that there's not something giving off the current that this person could be feeling. And that's the logical explanation.
To go on with the claims, there's also weird temperature fluctuations. So cold spots.
Right.
There's also disembodied voices that are heard, male and female, throughout the house. Now, there's one of the doors to the sitting room upstairs that opens on its own, this one room in particular, and then a shadow person is seen coming out and going in of this particular sitting room.
Already, we're looking at these claims and we're thinking, oh, that second floor or hallway, we need cameras, we need audio run up there, we need to check the EMF.
Right?
We need to test these doors. Do they swing? Is there a breeze coming through? Is there some kind of like
Is the
broken
foundation,
window?
yeah,
Right.
foundation tilted? That would make
Exactly.
it.
Yeah, these are all the things we think of when we run through these claims.
Now, there's also smells of powdery or a flowery perfume, and then also a hint of cigarettes that is smelled.
Take note of that one because this one comes back in our story.
Right, both the perfume and the cigarettes. There's also faint voices that are heard saying direct things like, "That's nice," or "Very nice," when the owners were upstairs doing some repairs.
Isn't that nice?
Right?
Some good feedback.
There's also sounds of children that run up and down the stairs and the hallway.
The upstairs hallway
Mhm.
again. Yeah. Hot
Yeah.
spot sounds like.
Now, the bathroom door in the upstairs on the second floor, library.
Yeah,
this-
bathroom right off that library room.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that one is known to bang as if someone were trying to get out, and keep that in mind, by the way.
Yeah, and I remember when we had a tour of the villa, the caretaker
That's what she
had
told us.
mentioned this specific
Mhm.
claim as well.
But she keeps a heavy wooden chest in front of it.
Right.
But there's lots of activity around that area and in that bathroom, including 3 knocks that supposedly you can hear from the bathroom. And then the attic is also rumored to be the location of some sort of hanging over by in the tower area.
That is like so cliche.
I get it.
I've investigated a mansion in Florida that had a tower just like that and had the same rumor. Why do all these towers have this hanging rumor and
Just
trigger
makes for a
warning, I
good
guess, on that
story.
one?
I don't think you were ever able to prove that, though, were you?
No, not this one. But
Through historical documentation, yeah. Also, footsteps are heard on the servants' staircase. I can vouch for that one. And then
Yeah.
also the basement. So supposedly in the basement, there is this ghost man that lives down there, and he's supposed to be dark and more negative of a spirit. Now, through the internet, we had found that there are supposedly 9 deaths, including, and here's a trigger warning about suicide, but 9 deaths, including one of them to be a suicide. So lots of stuff here. Now that we sick Kathy on the history, because she's we both history nerds, but she really loves doing the research for our team, and I'm really glad because I did it for years and years and I enjoy it,
it's a
but
lot of work. Yeah.
it is a lot of work.
So it is a separate role for a team member. So as the historian for OKPRI, I usually dig into as much history that I can find, and even looking at the claims if I'm already aware of some of the claims on a location to see, is there something that I can validate from these claims that's in the history? Was there something that happened on this location that connects the claims to a story, that it has evidence in newspapers, or I'll look for names of people who lived there, who were their former owners, in case you pick up on something that happened, or if you pick up on names for spirits that are present there.
Yeah, and I think the history is also very important because it can separate fact from fiction,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's just like the telephone story. You got one little thing that gets started, and throughout the years, it's turned into something way bigger
Sure.
than what it is.
Yeah, and 9 deaths and 1
That's a lot.
apparent suicide is
Yeah.
a lot to be out there on the internet. I'm like, so
That right
that's
there.
something we definitely, for the dignity of the location and the home, can we validate that?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's true, points to high potential for paranormal activity. A lot of people dying in one location, especially if those deaths were traumatic, that can leave quite an imprint. It could trap people there that maybe if their death was sudden and they didn't realize they died, leading back to this Earthbound episode that we just did a couple weeks ago. Is there somebody that's potentially stuck?
Right. It's also going to tell me don't live there because chances are
It's haunted.
your death is going to be there as well.
You ever drive
But-
by a location, and this is for our listeners, and you just look at the place and you're like, gosh, that place looks haunted.
Oh, yeah. I do that thing called, hey, it's tagged me. We got to go check it out because I know that it's haunted. But you also got to realize that some of these turn of the century, and then even before, these places, it wasn't uncommon for them to die in the home, get sick of illnesses more, just as our medical knowledge and medicines and equipment has advanced, we got more and more people who are living longer, for sure.
Yeah, and this is one of those houses when you drive by. It's Victorian style, Victorian era,
Beautiful.
built in 1889. And so you look at it and you think, oh, that place is haunted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up on a hill, so it overlooks the town of Atchison. It's pretty well known in the area.
Makes it even more creepier looking.
Oh, sure. Yes. And then the fact that it's open to paranormal investigations makes it an attractive place for that kind of thing. It makes people think of ghosts when they drive by.
Right. So to make it clear, there's no regular resident who lives here. The homeowner is very gracious. She's a sweetheart. She is very much into giving ghost tours and letting ghost hunters come in to investigate. Of course, there's a fee. She's
Right,
got to
keep
make
it up.
money.
Gotta
Yeah.
pay the
maintenance.
bills, right?
Exactly.
There's
So-
electricity to the house and
Right.
running water and sewage. Yes.
So
And
is it haunted? That's the question. Listen to
well,
this episode and
if
you're going to
it's
find out.
on an episode of The Psychic and the Skeptic, it might be haunted. So Atchison, the city, is also the county seat. It's in Kansas, like I said, along the Missouri River, about 50 miles to the northwest of Kansas City. It was incorporated as a town by the territorial legislature on August 30th, 1855. So 3 years later, it became a city. Its proximity to the river is what made the city thrive in its early years. So many freighters and steamboats would come through and port in Atchison, and it quickly became a leading commercial center. So its steamboat landings on the Missouri River, its wagon roads to the west, also made the city thrive. The post office became the headquarters and the starting point for mail going out to the west. The stagecoach line from Atchison to Placerville, California, was one of the longest and most important lines in the country. In the 1860s, the town's leaders and investors founded the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. And later, the 1945 film The Harvey Girls, starring Judy Garland, featured a very catchy and Oscar-winning song that many from Atchison still hum today. And we did play that song while we were investigating.
Mm-hmm.
The Lewis and Clark expedition spent Independence Day in the area in 1804 at an abandoned village of the Kansas tribe at the time. 50 years later, Atchison became one of the first settlements in the Kansas Territory. The town's namesake, Senator David Rice Atchison, technically was president of the United States for one day. And the town still knows about this history, too. It's their claim to fame that they had a president for one day on March 4th, 1849, when President Zachary Taylor refused to take the oath of office on a Sunday. He was holding the day holy. So Vice President George M. Dallas stepped down as president of the Senate just 2 days before what was supposed to be Inauguration Day. So under the Presidential Succession Act of 1792, Atchison was next in line to serve as president of the United States, although he never took the oath of office. In honor of this quirky bit of history, the city of Atchison is home to the world's smallest presidential library for President Atchison in the historic Santa Fe Depot Museum.
But hey, at least he had a city named after him, right? I mean,
right.
come on, what more can you want?
I mean, I love that the small town history and the little quirkiness of it.
Oh,
It just
yeah.
builds on the character of the location
Mhm.
that we're investigating. And when we're sitting there for a sit down and we don't know what spirits we're dealing with,
Oh,
we can
yeah.
go back as far as the town's beginning. We never know if there's something still lingering spiritually that has a connection to this history. So I think it's really important to know where the town came from.
Oh, for sure.
So there are some well-known celebrities like Amelia Earhart, which the Amelia Earhart Museum, the home of her grandparents.
Oh, remember when
is-
we drove by there and looked at that? That is
Yes.
beautiful. And
Oh,
it
it's beautiful
overlooks the
property.
river area.
Yep, you can see the
Oh.
river. Gorgeous house. But she was born at her grandparents' house in Atchison in 1897, and she lived there during her childhood years. Today, Atchison has over 20 sites that are on the National Register of Historic Places.
Yeah.
So if you're in the area and you don't already know about Atchison, or if you're passing through, it's worth a stop. Drive around.
Yeah, and speaking of which, if you're into haunted, Atchison has a lot of cool haunted places as well, like the Sally House. And
Right.
oh, wait, even better, our friend Brooke from API wrote a book called Haunted Atchison, and it's got a list of all the haunted places within Atchison. She went there herself and did the
Yes.
research, and y'all should check
she's
it
got
out.
a listing of the history as well. So Brooke
Uh-huh.
Montoya, you can look her up on Amazon, or we'll link to her book for you if you're interested.
Yeah, I'll
on
put a
our social
picture of her book so that way people can see it if
Yes,
they're
yeah.
interested in getting it.
Yeah, that way which book it is by the book cover.
Mhm.
She has a children's version of the same book as well for 8 to 12-year-olds if your kids are into the spooky. So the McInteer Villa itself currently has 11 rooms, a full basement, 5 bedrooms, 3 full baths, 2 half baths, a brick foundation, and a detached garage.
I'd hate to be the one that has to clean that house, let me tell you.
Right?
Oh,
It's 4,372 square feet.
huge.
The original owner, John McInteer, was born in Ireland in 1827, married his first wife, Alice Conley, in 1857 in Cincinnati, Ohio. She was born in Ireland also and was 2 years younger than John. They moved to Atchison in 1861, and Mr. McInteer made his fortune making harnesses and saddles. So there were no cars, so this was a lucrative business to have at the time.
I know when we were there, we also drove by and saw his former business, his shop, where he
Yes.
made those. That was
Mhm.
really cool.
Yep. So he opened the shop in 1880 and kept the business until he retired a year before his death. He built his Victorian-style home on the McInteer block at 8th and Commercial Streets in 1889 for $14,000 at the time.
Wow. Cheap.
Yes.
Of course, back then it was probably
I
really
know.
expensive.
Oh, sure. So John's first wife, Alice, died of intermittent fevers, as they called it, shortly after the home was built.
Can you explain what that is for those who may not know?
Well, back in the late 1890s,
Mm-hmm.
they had different terms for certain medical illnesses. Intermittent fever in its own means a fever that occurs from time to time. So you have a fever, you get over it, you get a fever again for a longer period of time. And back then, that was probably indicating that they either had malaria or tuberculosis.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
tuberculosis was pretty common at that time, but malaria, nowadays we don't really see a malaria in the United States, but back then it was in portions of the Midwest, so it could have been one or the other. They did have x-rays at the time. They probably could have x-rayed her to see if it looked like tuberculosis,
Mm-hmm.
but even then there wasn't much treatment for it, except they thought just get some fresh air and
Right.
you'll breathe better, right? But that did not work for her if that was her treatment because, again, she died shortly after the home was built. So a couple of years later, 1891 is when she died at the age of 63.
Oh, she didn't get a chance to enjoy the home much.
Not really. So John married his second wife, Anna Conlin, in 1896. She was a 38-year-old widow with 3 sons. So he definitely went younger.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah.
So if a place has had someone sick with tuberculosis, can the area be contaminated where they lived? How long does that stay in the air or on surfaces?
It needs a host to survive, so it does need to go from person to person. It is airborne. So if you were around somebody with tuberculosis, you would need the same N95 masks that we used during COVID time. But it takes a much longer period of time of exposure before you then come down with tuberculosis. So that's why it would run rampant in families, because they're around each other for a long period of time.
And they didn't know they had it.
Right. Which is why it doesn't spread as quickly as some other airborne illnesses do.
Okay, thank you. I was
Yeah.
just curious because, we've investigated the TB sanitarium before and I'm thinking, I might have exposed myself a little bit.
Well, I
in the
mean,
past.
to be honest, we all walk around in places where people probably have active tuberculosis.
Right. And we just didn't even
But
know.
I'm not trying to create any panic on the podcast here. But it takes a lot of exposure
Okay.
for a longer period of time for you to actually come down with it.
All right.
As medical professionals, if we're caring for somebody in the hospital, even though we're only going to care for them for a certain period of hours, we're going to put them in a negative isolation room and we're going to have the TB masks on and do all the precautions.
Right. Smart.
So Anna Conlin,
Second
see.
wife, right?
yes, not long after that marriage, John had died in the home. So now we're at 2 people. Remember, the internet said 9.
Right.
So we're keeping
this
a
is
count here.
2.
John died in his home on July 17th, 1902 of dropsy. And that's another one of those old terms
What's that?
from back then. That basically is edema or swelling
A demon.
in the
What?
fluid buildup. A demon. No, edema. Edema is swelling, particularly in the lower extremities,
Mm-hmm.
which is why they called it dropsy. It's like the fluid's dropping to your feet.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. But what we know in modern medicine, that's probably a sign of heart failure.
Right.
So that blood isn't really getting back to the heart very well, so fluid leaks into your interstitial spaces, and now you have edema. So he probably had heart failure. And it also could be secondary to kidney disease. So the obituary said that he was 75 years old. However, his headstone said that he was 73 years old. So
I remember
kind
that.
of believe it's hard to know. There have been headstones that were wrong. You would think the headstone would be from the family.
What about his death certificate?
I only have the obituaries.
Okay.
And we have photos of his headstone. We actually went to the cemetery and we saw these headstones ourselves.
Would anybody have that death certificate?
Yeah, I'm sure it exists somewhere. It's probably in some town records.
Okay.
But obituary in the newspaper could have been what was wrong there. I would think the headstone would be more accurate
I would think.
than an obituary.
Yeah.
It depends on who wrote the obituary.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have been a typo. They could have been reading off of somebody's handwritten note of what the
Right.
obituary would state, and they just misinterpreted it.
Yeah.
But it's always interesting to find these little mistakes in some of the records. Yeah. Anyways, so Anna continued to live in the home until her death in 1916 from an embolism. So that's a blood clot.
In the
So
head, right?
either to the head, which would be a stroke, or to the heart, which is a heart attack. And she died at about the age of 58. And she had suffered from a stroke the week prior, so it probably could have been a worsening or a continuing of the stroke. And she was found by her nurse, Miss Cordy Goodwin, and Anna had shared her home with many of her Conlon relatives, including several children.
She was young. 58 is not that old at all. For
Oh.
even back then, I think that's still pretty young.
Right. So Anna's brother, Judge Charles J. Conlon, a prominent Atchison lawyer, inherited the home after 1916.
What
He-
a name.
He lived there with his, he's a lawyer, right?
Right.
He lived there with several family members, including Anna's sons. Remember, she had 2 sons,
Mm-hmm.
their wives, and their children. With that much square footage, like everybody could live there.
Right. And
And
the whole family.
yeah. One of Anna's sons, Charles Donovan, was a veteran of the First World War. And this is a trigger warning here. This is what we mentioned earlier about a suicide with the 9 deaths and 1 suicide.
Mm-hmm.
It was confirmed that one did occur in this house.
Wow. Okay. So maybe
So-
there was some truth to the internet claim
Yeah,
about it.
definitely on that one. But this Charles Donovan had committed suicide in the home on October 10th, 1922, at the age of 34. So a local newspaper article had confirmed this. It states that he shot himself in the head with a .22 caliber rifle, and it took him 2 hours to die.
That's
So,
horrible.
Again, these are the stories that could leave a scar on the home and bring potential for paranormal activity.
Mm-hmm.
It was thought that he was suffering from illness and despondency. So it's another one of those old medical terms, which means depression.
Okay.
So he probably had some PTSD, which wasn't a recognized mental illness from his time in the war.
Right.
So he'd been telling his family that he wasn't feeling well and he had a headache. So he went upstairs to his room, and 5 minutes later, his family heard the gunshot. It was his uncle, Charles J. Conlon, who ran upstairs and found him.
Wow.
And there's an article in the paper about that.
I just could not imagine. That's just horrible.
And when we had the tour, they told us that his room is where the library is now.
When y'all had the tour. Remember?
Yeah.
I sit out.
Yeah, right. Yeah. When we, meaning not you.
Right. Let me clarify that. So
Right.
all this information they're finding
Yes.
out and all the information that Kathy gets,
Oh,
of
yeah.
course, I'm not hearing any of this because I want to go in not knowing anything. And I specifically told API, don't tell me nothing.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear nothing.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
they were very
Yes,
kind.
and that's so that you know what messages you're getting are not coming from your own brain.
Mm-hmm.
And it validates to us what you're picking up on because we know you don't have this information. So I get super excited when I've got a ton of history and all this potential for paranormal activity. We've already got 3 deaths now and a 4th.
Wow. Okay. So 4 and counting.
Next, the home became a rooming house between 1925 and about 1950. During this time, a young couple, Mr. and Mrs. William T. Wood, had been expecting a child. Their daughter, Ramona Jane Wood, was born on September 16th, 1929, at a local hospital. But she died just 4 days later.
Oh.
The following year, Judge Conlon died in the home, number 5,
Yep.
on January 30th, 1930. He
Mm.
was 69 years old.
What did he die from? Or does it even say?
No, it said after a long illness in the newspaper article that mentions his death. And it does say that he died in the home.
Okay. So it doesn't really say what the illness is, just says it was
just
illness.
a long illness.
Okay. So number 5 and counting.
It says that he had been a leader in Northeast Kansas politics for the last 40 years, retiring as city attorney.
Wow.
And he retired as city attorney a year prior to his death because of failing health. So he had been dealing with whatever this illness was for a long period of time. So Miss Isabel, a.k.a. Goldie, Altis, had purchased the home in 1952. She was a retired professional violinist.
Wow.
And was known as being, quote, an eccentric or someone who is odd or strange. The local census records do not show her age, but that she is, quote, over 21 year after year.
So she's 21 years old forever.
Yes. Yep. So she probably just told that census reporter, I'm 21. It is my 15th, 21st birthday.
Was she just a little delusional Alzheimer's?
Or my 30th, 21st birthday. Goldie was known to wear only black, and children from the Franklin School across the street would see her walking and called her the witch who lived in the old mansion. So
that's
cliche.
sad.
But that school is still there. Yep. Her plans were to restore the house, but she did not have the financial resources to do so. She sold it to George Lee Gerardi shortly before her death in December of 1969. She also died in the home at age 75 years.
So there's 6.
That's 6 now.
Mm-hmm.
Her death was said to be from natural causes.
Does it say now where she died in the house?
Yes. So there's a newspaper article about her death. The headline says, former city employee found dead. Miss Idabel Altis, 75, of 1901 Kansas Avenue, was found dead at her home at 5:30 p.m. yesterday. Her physician said death was from natural causes and that she probably had been dead for 24 hours when found.
Wow.
The article further states that George Lee Gerardi, who recently purchased the house where Miss Altis lived, and Miss Dorothy Bond, both neighbors, found her body in a chair in the home. Now, if you remember one of the claims,
right,
the rocking chair.
Right.
It is said that is her rocking chair.
That is there.
And the rocking chair that she was found in, and it's still in the home.
Right. In fact, I have a picture of that I will post on our Facebook and Instagram page for when this episode airs, so you guys can see that.
Yes, and George Gerardi restored the home after purchasing it in 1969. He eventually died in the home on June 17th, 2006.
There's 7.
As confirmed by his obituary. He was born July 25th, 1919 in Wathena, Kansas, and was a World War II U.S. Army veteran. Mr. Gerardi was a master carpenter, retiring in 1982, and was a member and past master of the active Masonic Lodge.
Ah, Mason.
Yep, and the Abdullah Shrine. He served on the Atchison Housing Authority Board and the Northeast Kansas Votech School Board. He was a member of the Martha Washington Chapter number 215, Order of the Eastern Star in Atchison, Kansas. So he was very involved in his community.
Mm-hmm.
He left behind his wife of 58 years, Thelma Gerardi, who remained in the home. So Thelma Louise was born on November 10th, 1926, in Atchison County. She graduated from Atchison High School and had a career in many places in and around Atchison. Mrs. Gerardi was a member of the Atchison United Methodist Church, a longtime Girl Scout leader, a member and past matron of the Martha Washington Chapter 215 of the Order of Eastern Star for 50 years. Thelma enjoyed playing the piano, her peony flower garden, feeding and watching her birds, and her obituary states that Thelma truly loved living in a historical house and enjoyed sharing stories of living in one of Atchison's historic homes. She was always delighted when the Atchison trolley would stop outside her home on their historic and haunted homes tours. So gotta love that. She's open to paranormal investigation, right?
She's, hey, it's haunted here, stop.
She, too, passed away in the home on September 10th, 2014. So 8 people in total are known to have passed away in the home. One infant whose parents were boarding in the house during the Depression had died at the hospital, as I mentioned, just 4 days after her birth. So I'm wondering if that infant maybe was found not breathing, like
Maybe.
SIDS, and they brought the baby to the hospital and she was pronounced there. So
Mhm.
the story could have changed to make it seem like she died in the hospital.
So did they count the baby as a
I think
death
the
for
baby's
there?
counted as the 9th.
Okay.
Yes.
Wait a
So,
second. We were only on 7. The
no,
baby
we
would
had
make
8.
8.
Yeah, 8 was Thelma Louise was our 8th.
Okay. So then okay, I see.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. And the infant was before Thelma, but I think that one wasn't 100% clear.
Okay.
Right. So it sounds like truly 9,
It's
including
correct.
one of those being the Charles Donovan suicide.
Well, at least what's documented.
So tons of history. Totally made me super excited. I couldn't wait to get there. How long was the drive? Was it a 6-hour, 6.5, 7-hour drive to get up there
Probably
from where
we're at. Yeah.
a
It was a
beautiful
bit.
drive up through the countryside of Kansas.
Mhm.
Yes. So our team was very excited to investigate this location. And we spent 2.5 days at this location to thoroughly investigate it.
Right.
So we arrived to investigate, and the date is interesting. We investigated on July 20th, 2023, which was exactly 121 years and 3 days from the anniversary of John McInteer's death. He
Wow.
died on July 17th, and we were there on July 20th of that year.
Your brain must be really bored to figure that
I
out.
remember we made a point about that. We're like, wait, this is 3 days after the anniversary, the 121st anniversary of his death.
Right.
So it's just interesting. I wonder sometimes if that
Set the
does
activity into
anything
motion.
for the activity.
It could. There is a theory behind that,
Well, especially with
actually.
residual, if something about that date and that time and the season and the environment.
Mhm.
But anyway, so yes, we arrived around 3 o'clock and were greeted by the owners. We had our tour and started bringing our equipment in.
Right. And then I had my audio recorder that was sitting in the old kitchen area. And I think Becky and Kim and Eric and Jim, they had the majority of their small stuff in. So you can hear them talking in the background. But my audio recorder picked up this man's voice. And it sounds to me like he's saying garage.
Right.
And what's weird about this is because there is no garage on the property
No, there's no garage.
where we pulled up and parked.
We were parked in like a driveway area.
Right.
But, yeah.
But there's no original garage,
No,
anything
the
like
house
that.
wasn't built with a garage. They had horses. Remember, he was
Right.
Yeah. So there was
Right.
probably a barn off on their property at some point, which is no longer there. But
Which
there's
makes
no
me
garage.
wonder if this is a residual or is this intelligent? Because it just doesn't
It
match.
probably doesn't even say garage because it could sound like mirage or anything that sounds like that. It's whispery.
Right.
So we can play it. And
Yeah.
if you all want to see what you think it says, let us know.
Right. Go ahead and play that.
Yeah, so you can hear a little bit of the voices and then you hear garage. It's whispery and faint. So you may have to rewind if you want to hear that one again.
And let me say on this investigation, what we're going to do is, since this was a 2-day investigation, we're going to go through for the purpose of time and on this podcast, just highlight some of the main things that occurred. And then if you all are interested, you can go back and check out the full investigation on our website.
Pulling up the best clips from this.
Right. And talking
Investigation.
about some of the better experiences.
Yeah,
So
the ones that are easier to hear, like in a podcast format. Yep.
yeah. So around 4:29 p.m., what had happened was Curtis and Jim and Eric, they started exploring the basement area. And when they were done, they went through and started turning off all the lights. And Curtis and Eric were the last ones to come out of this basement. And Curtis happened to notice that this one particular basement light turned on all by itself. Now, that is also one of the things that has been reported happening by other paranormal teams who have investigated the location. So don't have anything to show on that, just other than I think on our website, we have a little video where the boys are talking about that.
Right. And that's a common thing that happens in places. And as far as debunking goes, it could be loose wiring. Just it's not a good connection with the switch that sometimes the lights will come back on or go off by themselves. It's one of the common claims from some of our residential cases.
But I will tell you, over the course of the 2 days, that's the only time that happened. So
Sure, right. And
keep
it
that
could
in
have just
mind.
been the way that they flipped the switch off, that it wasn't a complete connection
Right. Could have been. I'm
or
just saying it
disconnect.
never
Yeah,
happened again after that
sure.
point, the whole 2 days that we
Oh,
were
they
there.
didn't turn it off the same way the second time.
All right, moving along. It's about 4:51 p.m. and our former investigator, Eric, he was on the second floor. He decided, hey, I want to go upstairs and I want to put an audio recorder down to start monitoring one of the rooms. And so he also was like checking out the bathroom, and suddenly he heard like shuffling of feet. And then right there in the bathroom doorway, he felt, as he was standing there, he felt like this light push, he described as on his chest, as if someone were pushing him out of the way to quickly pass by. That's
Yeah,
how he described it.
right.
And of course, this wasn't captured on audio, but I did get like a little video recorded of him talking
Yeah.
about this
Yeah,
experience.
because it's a personal experience. And his health is okay. He was not having any chest pressure, chest pain, or heart attack.
Right.
Right? That would be my concern at the time. It's like, you
Exactly.
got pressure on your chest? Let
And
me
let
check
me
your blood
say,
pressure.
yeah, and over all of this, I actually created a little movie documentary of this
Yeah,
investigation, and that's also on our website if you
yeah, it's
guys
such
want
a
to check
great
it out.
location. Yeah.
Right,
Some of our favorite cases end up getting their own mini documentary.
right.
Yeah.
And if we have enough experiences and evidence. So, okay, it's about 5:32 p.m. right now, and still the first day, first night, and we are getting a feel of the building. We are on the second floor in one of the rooms that's decorated up like a child's room or a kid's room, like a playroom. And as we are sitting here in this area, we all heard what sounded like boom, like boom. We heard that once, and everybody except for Curtis heard that. And it sounded like it was coming from the attic area right above this room. And my audio recorder actually captured that. Let's go ahead and play the audio clip and listen real close. You can hear.
I can imagine with all the different groups and stuff that come through here.
Did you hear that?
What was that? That was upstairs.
Above.
So that one was a little faint, harder to hear. I only heard one knock, but you guys heard a few of them, like at least 4.
Yeah, it sounded like ba-bum, ba-bum.
Right. And so you hear Curtis talking about with all the groups coming in, and you hear a boom, and then Becky responds to it. But just to show you, it's hard to capture things that are super obvious sometimes, just depending on the recording quality, where the recorders are, and hearing it with your own ears on location.
Right.
So,
It's like being in the right place at the right time to be able to catch stuff.
right. But you can hear our reactions to it. You can
Mhm.
hear some of the thuds, at least one of the louder ones of the 4. And the next piece of evidence that we have
Oh,
is
yeah.
an EVP, right?
Yeah, this one's kind of funny because we were setting up equipment, and Becky and Jim and Eric and Kim were setting up some equipment in the basement. And there was this skeleton that was in a wheelchair. And there was a claim prior that if a joke is told down here in this one particular area, that people are able to record an EVP, right?
And this is
And
electronic voice phenomenon, the type of recordings where you capture voices that you didn't hear at the time, but you
right.
hear them when you play back your recording.
So Becky,
She's
really?
our jokester.
Right. And so she starts to make this joke. And it was right after this that her audio recorder actually captured this voice saying, and it sounds male to me, which
Yeah.
is supposedly who responds, but it says, it's time.
She's very funny, so he just
Right.
wasn't having it.
I guess this ghost was just letting her know that her joke wasn't funny, which I think is cool. And
She
this
could do
would,
better.
yeah, this would be indicating of an intelligent haunting.
Right, because it's a
Because-
direct response to what she was
Right.
saying.
He was responding. So let's go ahead and play that one.
I guess you do. Is it what we were talking about?
Okay, so it's a little faint there, but you hear it's not funny.
I know. I think that's actually funny.
Yeah.
That it was commenting.
Right? Yes, that's pretty cool.
Our next one is
Yes.
actually your experience, Kathy, that you
Yes.
had on the second floor when you were by yourself.
Yes, and this leads us into a whole section of experiences and evidence that we captured that makes this one of my favorite cases. So
I know.
because it's rare that sorry, it sounds a little,
She's getting
I don't
sentimental
know.
and
It sounds a
teary-eyed,
little,
folks.
it's rare because as a skeptic, it's hard for me to really be stumped by something and not have some random explanation.
Mhm.
So I was upstairs getting set up. Because the McInteer Villa is such a large location, we decided to split the team up. We had a good number of us there to investigate that night.
Mhm.
And there were several floors. And whenever we split up, we separate the team by a floor. So we have an empty floor between us. This way, we don't have anybody on the floor directly below or directly above us, because walking around, we could create footsteps for the people below us, or people talking below us could be mistaken for sounds as we're on the floor above.
It's basically to avoid any type of contamination
Right.
of recorded evidence.
So to start our split teaming, there was you, me, and Curtis that were going to be upstairs on the second floor.
Mhm.
Becky, Jim, Eric, and Kim were in the basement.
Right.
So we had the ground floor, the first floor, empty. But we're still setting up. So I think there were still some of us grabbing equipment on the first floor. I had gone up the front staircase onto the second floor outside of the bedrooms, setting up a geophone, which captures vibrations in the floor.
Mhm.
And I was setting up a static recorder. And while I was up there, I heard footsteps coming towards me in the hallway. And it was just as if there should have been a person there. These were so close to me. There was nobody else on the floor with me. I could clearly see down the hallway. And it wasn't a faraway sound. This was just a few feet in front of me.
I think she was a little freaked out because she's like, "Hey, Christy, where
I'm
are
like,
you?"
Christy,
I'm kidding.
is that
I'm
you?
kidding.
Because there was a little turn in the hallway towards the other end, the opposite
Right.
end, so you couldn't really see the back staircase if somebody was coming up. But the footsteps were much closer to me than that back staircase. There's no way it was coming from back there. So I thought maybe this is the floor shifting. You're coming up the stairs near where I was standing. You can hear me explain this in this next audio clip. Hey, Christy, are you up here?
I'm right here on the landing. Where are you?
I'm in the hallway and I had footsteps next to me.
Huh?
I'm in the hallway and I had footsteps next to me.
Oh, yeah, it's just us?
No. No.
You heard footsteps up there?
Yeah, it was right next to me.
Okay, hang on, I'm coming. Curtis! Shoot.
Okay, so you hear in the beginning of the clip the footsteps and my reaction. Trying to be calm about it, but I was a little bit excited, not going to lie there.
And I can't blame you because having a personal experience like
I
that.
rarely do.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
And then we'll move right along. I will tell you that this is still the first night, by the way, the first day. And we're on the second floor. Again, the second floor is pretty dang active.
Yeah.
But we are doing a sweep where we conduct all the baseline readings.
Yep. EMF readings, temperature readings.
Right. And we are right there at the library. And
This room is the room that is rumored to be where Charles Donovan had taken his life.
oh, yes, I guess that's really important to mention. And I was actually going to mention that with one of the EVPs that we get coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, this area is very active. And in fact, where we were getting those footsteps and stuff, that was right in that same area.
That's right outside the door to
Yes.
his room, now the library.
Right. And so we're doing like a sweep, and then my audio recorder picks up this male's voice, and it sounds like he's saying, shh, shh. And so I do believe this is probably intelligent, just looking back at all the activity that we've had there. But you can definitely hear it. So we'll go ahead and play that one.
So I'm wondering, are we assuming it's male because a whisper and a shush could sound like, how do you know if it's male or female?
I don't know.
Maybe just because of the room it's in and who's suspected of being there?
Could be, or maybe just the tone of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes a whisper, you can
That's
still
true.
tell the voice. And I'll just go ahead and say this. Right after this, Curtis also had a personal experience in this same room, but he did think that he heard a woman's voice. It's about 11:18 p.m. And right beside him in his left ear, he heard this woman lightly ask him, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
But we recorded the video and the audio, and we didn't capture that. But again, this was a pretty active area. So let's go ahead and play that Shush EVP.
You know,
Yeah, maybe it is sounding a little male, with a little deeper sound to it.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is there's no reaction to it. So it's clearly not something that
We
was
heard.
heard at the time.
Right, exactly.
Unless, here's my skeptic coming out, unless somebody was moving and it made a sh noise and movement. And it just seemed obvious at the time for the person there.
Possibility, but I think when I would have been reviewing my audio, I would have taken that into consideration and not had clipped that if I felt that was the case.
Right.
So
Yeah, and usually we listen pretty quickly after an investigation so that we're remembering what we were doing at the time and we listen back. So
Exactly.
it's helpful.
yeah,
Okay.
if you wait months and months afterwards,
Yeah,
there's
you
going to
won't
be a
remember.
lot you're
Yeah.
going to have to toss out because you just cannot remember the
Right,
circumstances.
right. Yeah. And sometimes having video helps because this next
Mhm.
segment goes through a whole series of events that were happening while we were sitting down in that hallway.
Mm-hmm.
And to piece it all together, the video kind of helps when we're trying to recreate what we're experiencing. But it all started with finally you, me, and Curtis get to sit down on that second floor and begin what we call a sit-down investigation.
Right, because we had our entire team split up into two teams.
Yeah.
And so, and I think this is probably my favorite part of the 2-day
Right.
investigation.
Oh, yeah. I
Yes.
mean, mine for sure.
Yes.
So it was about 11:43, and it all started when Curtis and I could smell cigarette smoke.
And I didn't smell it.
No, it started
first.
with me, and then Curtis agreed, oh, yeah, I smell it too. And we're in the second floor hallway is right in the middle of the second story. So we're
Mhm.
not near any windows. There aren't any windows open. It's July. It's hot.
Right.
So we don't want any of that air coming in.
And I think I started to finally smell it there after a few
Right.
minutes.
It's like
And
it
to me,
traveled around the hallway.
and to me, it smelled like a freshly lit cigarette. Not like a
Right.
stale one or not like
like it's on your
cigarette smoke that was
clothing.
in the air.
Right.
Yeah, it was a fresh lit cigarette.
And we are sitting down on the floor of the second story hallway just outside that library room.
Mm-hmm.
And Curtis was actually closer to the library. I'm sitting across from Curtis, and then you're closer to the front stairwell.
Right.
So we're all sitting together, and we start talking about this smell. And it would fade out and then come back again strong. And that is one of the claims, if you remember, we were
Yes.
talking about smells on that second story. But right about at 11:45 p.m., 3 knocks were heard in the hallway by all 3 of us.
Yes.
And we captured it on audio.
And video, by the
Right.
way.
Yes, it's
Mhm.
also that you hear it everywhere. Yeah.
Right.
But the interesting thing here is I also could feel it in the floor. So unlike the time when I was by myself up there,
Mm-hmm.
the steps were nearby, but I wasn't sitting on the floor. I was standing up. But the sound, and we could feel it in the floor, was right at the same spot where I had heard knocking previously.
Right. And I think what I'll do is when this episode is due to air, I'll go ahead and I'll post the links to not only our movie documentary, but also to these individual clips So that way you guys can go back in and see that,
Yeah.
how we experienced
You'll love
it.
my reaction.
Right. So,
Here,
but
let's play those knocks so you can
yes.
hear what we were hearing. That's why memories, and just not even paranormal. Oh, it smells like you smell brownies, and it makes you think of your grandma's. Was that a footstep?
That
Did
was
you feel
something.
that?
Yeah.
Okay, so there it is. The first 3 knocks
Mm-hmm.
and our reaction. And so we start talking about this. And as we're talking, I'm also knocking, describing it, and we're just like baffled over it. And
Right.
the discussion carries on and it happens again. So here's another clip.
Was there
I
3? I
bumped.
heard 2. Oh, and I'm getting chills.
There it was.
That was it. Yep, that was it. That was really where we started getting excited because you could hear our gasp because it was clear. We felt it. We all noticed it at the same time. So it was witnessed by 3 people, and we just started going back on because you were videoing at the same time. So we were watching the video on your phone to hear it again just through your video. And while we're reviewing it, it's happening a 3rd time. And this time we had 5 more knocks while watching the video. So we do have that on an audio clip to play for you, but you're going to hear the old clip of us reviewing while we have more knocks. So the excitement's kind of ramping up. We're getting more and more knocking. There is nobody on the floor below us. I've also looked at where there could be any plumbing or pipes, and there's no bathrooms. All the plumbing is on the exterior walls because of the age of this house, and plumbing had to be added later. So here we go. Let's play that clip of the knocking.
It's this last one.
What was that? I heard that bump. Okay, bump. This was the same area.
Doing it
where
right now.
I might be sitting
It
where I
is.
heard footsteps.
Right here.
Is it me?
No. Because you
It
didn't
felt
rock.
like it was under my butt.
There it goes.
Oh. Look.
Wow.
Yes, again. What is going on?
That is a lot.
I
Is
got
it
that.
shifting?
I don't know how it could be shifting.
No, you would hear the creaking by moving.
Yes.
It's like right under my butt.
We're
I
not.
must love your butt. You
We're
love
not
it
moving.
so much.
We're not moving enough to
No.
make it
No.
You didn't move, and it did it.
pop like that.
That's why I grabbed the camera, because it did it a second ago.
Yep, and there you have it. They just kept coming, all these knocks. So this was clearly something unusual, especially for it to happen that many times.
Yeah, and if you look at the video clips, you'll see that we're just sitting there and then you just hear the knocks coming out of the blue and we're all like
Right.
scratching our
It's clearly not
heads.
us moving. It's not any loose floorboards shifting.
Right.
And this is coming from the skeptic that would say it's probably settling. This you could feel. This was different than settling. We've heard pops and clicks and ticks
Oh, yeah.
all the time on all kinds of investigations. This
Mhm.
was straight up footsteps or knocking in the floor that you could feel. Anyways, so after this session, we swapped with the other team. We went to the basement while they came up to the 2nd floor, and we really didn't have anything else happening. The night was slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't seem we weren't having any more personal experiences.
Probably because it put all of its energy into knocking.
Right, probably. There's a theory behind that. Where are you going to get the energy from after you've manifested and did all the things? So,
I will say, though, at night, both nights, our audio recorders did capture some things while we were sleeping, like footsteps on the servant's staircase. And
yeah, it was like one knock or one tap. So,
yeah, like little
sometimes-
things like that.
yeah,
Footsteps.
we would play that, but it's just a single knock or tap. And so we don't always have clear proof, since we weren't there to witness it, that wasn't something settling when it's a single tap.
But all those sounds, though, are on our website if you guys want to check those out.
Right.
I think the most next interesting thing that happened was on night 2. And again, we're back on the 2nd floor and we're in that room that is made up to be the library. But of course, that was Charles's room, the one that did take his own life with the 22. And so we were conducting an EVP session during the sit down. And I do remember saying something like, hey, we're here. We're ready to listen. If there's anyone that wants to say anything, go ahead. And I was getting ready to say we're particularly interested in seeing if we could communicate basically with Charles, the one that took his own life. But right before I said that, you hear this man's voice come in and he says in a real light whisper, he says, I'm sad, basically.
Yeah.
And I knew after I heard this on my audio recorder later on, because we didn't hear it with our ears live, but I knew that this was Charles.
Yeah. In the
And so-
playback, when you were going over your review.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, you
Yeah.
know, and exactly what he said is what I was
We
feeling.
were in the library or his former bedroom. It all connects.
Yeah.
So this clip is a little bit faint, so you really got to listen in to hear it.
Mhm.
I'll try to amplify the volume to make it easier on the podcast. Otherwise, you might need headphones for it. But
Right.
it's important because it directly relates to the history and what we know about that specific location.
Yes. Let's go ahead and play that clip. All right. We're on the second floor here with you. So if there is anybody here that would like to speak up and say anything, we are listening. We are particularly interested in... All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the psychic investigator comments. And I will tell you that I had picked up on 3 main spirits. There was a couple others, but these were the 3 main ones that I got into contact with. So since we just played this EVP of Charles saying that he was sad, when I was in the library doing this sit down, I had picked up on this man who had committed suicide. Now, I did feel like he felt remorseful and he was still in that heavy state of that depression. But I feel like he also felt like he was trapped in this distressing state and these emotions that he was in.
And you knew nothing about the history when you were picking up on this.
Correct.
Which completely floored me at the time, because this is pretty detailed and we knew about this history in the location.
Right. You and Becky always get excited. You're like, oh my gosh, we want to tell her, we want to tell her. We can't.
I don't even know if Becky knew the history, though, thinking back, because sometimes I don't have the chance to tell her. We
That's
met
true.
up. We didn't travel together, so I didn't get a chance to tell her ahead of time.
Right. But I'm
Yeah.
going to tell, I'll tell you just like I told Jill for that residential. Really? Are you really surprised? How many times has there been things that's
I know.
been,
And
confirmed?
Exciting every single time. It's like, what? Because you could say, you could guess that, but it's not very common. That is something you even pick up on.
Right.
Like the events that led up to his death are not a common thing in some of the places we've researched.
No, I think sometimes that is quite common. You may not know every exact detail, but like the overall, you get the impression of the emotions and
Right. I'm just saying it's not like something you would guess every time on a location. Ruling out the fact that this,
you mean just to come up with, oh, there's a
Yes.
suicide here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no.
it's
I
not
mean,
something you say a lot.
right.
it's
And
not.
you guys know me enough to know that if I don't feel it and I don't get it, then I don't say it.
Right.
But I also felt like this guy, this Charles, I'm going to call him Charles because that's exactly who it was. I also feel like he still felt an obligation to his mom, his mother, Anna, who was still there and looking after him, trying to help him. So that'll lead me into the second ghost. I did pick up on this woman who had once lived there. She was definitely connected to the history, and I felt like she had strong family ties to this Charles guy and other family members who had once lived in the home.
Yeah, there were at least 2 of his wives that died there.
Right. And I
And the
remember
old witch lady who died in the rocking chair. And her neighbors
that was
found her.
Goldie.
Goldie.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
was Goldie. But remember, I think it was Alice and Anna
Mhm.
on his wives. Like they had similar names, if I remember correctly. But his second wife, Anna, this is the one that had the son, Charles. Now, Anna felt like she still needed to be at home to help with things there. She also remained there because of Charles, her son. And she still tried to help him. And I felt like a sense of helplessness with her as well because she wanted to help him emotionally, but yet she felt like she really couldn't. And if you think about someone who's depressed in real life, it's very hard to get them motivated to help themselves. And so I feel like she could make a suggestion, but that suggestion for him he may not have always taken her up on it. So it's like this cycle. But she was definitely one of the ones that was there. So then the third spirit that I'm going to mention here was what everybody noted as the basement man. Now, the whole little spiel was, oh, you don't leave the basement door open because there's this dark demonic type spirit that's in the basement. And we did an Estes session up in the attic. I can't remember if it was the first or the second night, but I remember that it was this basement man that I came into contact with. And there was nothing to do with him being a demon or really a bad guy.
I think just everybody's afraid of basements. And so they automatically,
Yeah.
if they have an experience in a basement, they automatically think it's something negative and dark just because basements are dark and
Yeah.
scary.
Of course. But he's just an earthbound spirit. That's
Yeah.
all it was.
Another example.
Yes. And he did come off as like real big, bad, and tough. And as I started to communicate with him, I remember through the Estes session, I was trying to listen and get what was coming through, but then I was also seeing and hearing things. And this is where I came into contact with him. And he did have a little bit of a potty mouth. I remember he liked the F word really well. But I heard the name Danny and I assumed, okay, this is his name. But during this session, I at one point smelled smoke as if something was burning. Now, this was totally different than the cigarette
not
smell.
cigarettes. Yeah.
Right. And then I got the image of this large fire and like this house that it was burning. And I knew that Danny had lost his life in this fire. Now, through talking with him, he did admit to me that he was very angry about it, but said he was trying to forget it. And he told me that during an investigation there at the mansion, a point in the past, that another paranormal team had actually opened a portal into the mansion and he walked through it.
And that's how he got there.
Yes, that's how he got there. He explored the mansion and he liked it and he decided that he was going to stay.
It is nice.
It is, yeah. So I think he chose to stay too because
Right.
he was trying to put his past behind him.
And that makes sense with the theory about portals and maybe inappropriate investigation techniques that open up things.
Right. And I think through all of this, people that had mislabeled him as a demon or this really bad, heavy presence, I think they were picking up on his emotions, like the anger.
Right. So a little empath activity from some of those
Right.
people who could feel him.
And I think they just gave him a bad label after that. But really, when I tried to connect with him, I said, I don't think you're a bad guy after all, right?
Yeah.
That's when he said F off.
He likes
So
his reputation.
He likes that tough reputation. Exactly.
It takes a lot for us to F off, on the
Right.
occasion.
I remember us laughing and having a good time while we were up there too. And I was
Was
just
that through
kind of,
the Estes, though? We had the F off on the Estes session?
yes,
I remember that.
yes. And
So
I
the
did
Estes
capture
session
this.
is where we're playing the radio scanner
Mm-hmm,
that goes through radio channels too quickly for you to catch voices,
mm-hmm.
but you can sometimes hear voices in that white noise that it creates. And so we have headphones on an investigator who's listening for those sounds, whereas everyone else who doesn't have the headphones on are asking questions. So whoever has the headphones on will shout out what they're hearing so that they're not influenced by the questions.
Right.
And so we can get a more clear picture of what may be coming through on the radio, the ghost box, as they call it.
Right. And I remember the first time that I heard him use the F word, I was like, oh, ow.
Yeah, and I don't think that the FCC allows that over the radio. So
Exactly. And I think that's something that we discussed, that this was truly him. And not only did I hear it, but you heard it when you
Yes.
tried the headphones, and then
yes.
Becky as well.
Mhm.
But I really connected well with him and I really took to him and liked him a little bit.
Sorry.
Just in his personality. But
sometimes we come across that, though. This spirit had nothing to do with the history, yet there was
Mhm.
so much history in this place.
right.
So, but the fact that it's rented out to other paranormal teams for investigating,
Mm-hmm.
owners have to be
Cautious.
about who they let in sometimes,
Mhm.
and some people may not be using the right techniques or maybe opening things up and inviting things that should not be there. We don't do any invitations. We talk to who is suspected as being part of that location. We'll talk to the person who may be historically connected to the location, or we'll specifically address the supposed entity that is creating the claims.
Right.
So we don't We don't invite anything in. We
No.
don't do any weird little seance type stuff. We're just matter of fact, straightforward when we ask questions.
Right. And I will say overall, I think this type of investigation was a very audible one. Like we had a lot of things that happened more audibly. Like some places that you go, you might get more things. I know you don't like the photographic, but on video or photo or whatever. But this one was what seemed like it was just strictly audio between the sounds that we recorded, the knocks, the
Yeah.
EVPs. This was just more of that audio type
Most of the
investigation.
time, it's EVP audio clips that we have to present, and not so much in photos or video, and very little on personal experiences. But this one had
I had a lot.
all of it except video and photo. That's the extreme rare. That's like the holy grail for investigating,
Right.
the
And
actual photo.
if we wanted to go back to this one, I would. I think I would change it from the month of July. I would try something different to see if there's any sort of patterns as far as like
Right.
the weather or the temperature.
Well,
or
it
anything.
was close to the anniversary of the death of the original owner. So could that have, maybe we should go in October because that's the time when Charles died.
Right.
If there's any connection to paranormal activity and the anniversary of that person's death, we could test that theory.
Right. So I really enjoyed this investigation. I think we had a lot of fun. We were able to say that this is truly a place that's haunted. Even you as a skeptic, I think
Yeah.
you would, I mean,
Yeah, if any place that we've been at, this is one on my one hand checklist of places that I think
and
I
look,
could
you
count
heard it.
on one hand places that I think might actually be haunted in the many years I've been investigating, and this is one of the top 5 for sure.
All right. You guys heard that coming from the open skeptic, right?
So if you like these kind of episodes, you want to hear more out of our case files, write us in and let us know. And if you'd like, we can shout out your name on the podcast.
Right.
So write us in. And if you want us to mention your name on the podcast, please give us permission in your email so we can do so.
Right. Like we had someone write us in not too long ago that made a comment that they really enjoyed the historical aspect of the things that we talked about.
Right,
So,
which really made me happy as the historian. So I'd love to give you more history. But yeah, we don't necessarily have permission from him, but hello to you. You know who you are.
or her.
Or her. Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause
I'm
we're
not sure if it was a guy or a girl, just had the
However you
first initials.
identify.
Yeah.
Write us in again if you'd like to be shouted out on the podcast.
And guys, check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Instagram. Again, we post photos and videos, different things that we have for each of these weeks. So
Yeah,
check
you'll
that
wanna
out
check
if you're
these
interested.
out this time for sure.
Yeah,
You
oh,
want to
yeah.
see my reaction. If you'd like to follow our paranormal investigation group, you can go to our website at www.okpri.com or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/okparanormal. And you can share your own parastories, topic suggestions, and comments to psychicandskeptic, all spelled out, at gmail.com. So you can find us wherever you enjoy your podcasts, and thank you for listening.
Because the paranormal is the normal.
Not yet understood.